It's time for Supply Chain Now. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
All right, good afternoon. Scott Luton with Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. We aren't broadcasting live from Atlanta, Georgia today. We are broadcasting from beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona, where we're continuing our coverage of the Manufacturing Supplier Development Conference hosted by DMSCA, the Diverse Manufacturing Supply Chain Alliance. If this isn't on your radar, be sure to check them out at dmsca.us. So before we get started, a quick programming note for our audience. You can find us wherever you get podcasts from. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. So I want to welcome in my special co-host here today, sitting in for the one and only Greg White. We have Paul Noble, CEO and founder of Verison. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's so good to be here, and such a break from the cold and rainy weather in Atlanta.
It really is. And, you know, we haven't even had a chance to get out and explore Scottsdale. We've been busy talking with thought leaders and getting their thoughts and getting some presentations and keynotes.
But they've chosen a beautiful venue here. So no need to go far, but just out the door.
We're staying on the compound. That's right. All right, so Verison, of course, not only is our sponsor, but a little tidbit about them. They're powering AI-driven data harmonization globally. They're knocking out bad data one company at a time, right?
That's what we're trying to do.
Fighting the noble fight. Learn more at verison.com. So, Paul, we're about we've been here about a day now, 24 hours.
Yeah.
In our first 3 hours, we met more intriguing people than I met the previous 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So give us one early takeaway thus far from the little bit of time we've been here.
Yeah, and you see it on all the signage around is this kind of alignment, collaboration in the spirit of that. Again, we talked about it throughout our time here, and it's something we talk about all the time is that supply chain is such a collaborative part of these organizations' businesses, and the ability for manufacturing companies and their key suppliers to get on the same page is a superpower, and it's going to be a competitive advantage more and more as organizations continue to grow. So seeing that in this intimate setting with so many great leaders, influencers in supply chain, and being a part of that's been really cool.
Agreed. Very well put.
Thank
Very
you.
well put. Greg is going to be proud. All right. So
giving you a run for your money, Greg.
Yeah, that's right. Watch out, Greg. So I'm really excited about this conversation here today. I wish we could have taped the pre-show conversation. That would have been a great episode in and of itself. But our listeners will have to be satisfied and delighted, I'm sure, with this conversation with Michelle Morin, Global Procurement Leader, Supplier Diversity and Sustainability with Corteva Agriscience. Michelle, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. This is a beautiful place to be.
It really is. And I think we share that in common. This is both of our first times here in Arizona. Is that right?
Absolutely. I always thought Arizona would be too hot and too uncomfortable. It's absolutely delightful. The temperature's amazing. The sun went down last night, got a little chilly. I got excited. I grew up in Maine. It was my kind of temperature. Everything's gorgeous. I've never seen so many cactuses in my life. I think it's called cacti, not cactuses, but absolutely amazing. The mesa here is beautiful. The mountains that are surrounding, it's really idyllic, and we're getting a lot of work done.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a sign of things to come. We have enjoyed Michelle's storytelling already, and if that doesn't paint a picture, you got a talent at that, Michelle. We're going to have to story time with Michelle Morin, maybe it's a new series on Supply Chain Now. All right, so but equally as fascinating, if not more, is the Corteva story, and that we're going to dive into that in just a moment. But first, tell us more about yourself. Tell us, you said you're from Maine. Where'd you grow up? And give us an anecdote or two about your upbringing.
So I grew up in Maine, and it was a beautiful place to grow up, but they rolled the sidewalks up as soon as it got dark.
Right.
So as soon as I could, I left and went to Boston, where I spent 2 decades. And so love Boston, love the hustle and bustle of the city, love the full diversity that's represented in a major metropolitan center. Had some pleasure of working and teaching and having my own business for a while. Spent about 2 decades working with law firms and or government
Okay.
in some big legal problems. The good news is that we didn't make the problems worse. We helped resolve them. And I spent all this time in a space where the bad thing happened and you had to work on the fix. And I kept wondering, why don't people use law to make things right the first time?
Yeah, great
And
question.
and how do you do that? And so I went to MBA school and got an MBA and learned more about business. And oh my goodness gracious, there are processes and scorecards and methodologies of getting business right the first time. So I love that at this point in my career, I'm now in this fantastic new startup corporation, working in the oldest agricultural industry that ever existed in the world, working to do things right the first time. Not fixing problems, but paying it forward to help farmers feed the world.
So before we talk about Corteva, I know Paul's always curious about kind of that professional journey that you've already been alluding to. What is that, when you hear her background kind of before supply chain, I guess I'll put it, what is that, what do you think that brings to the table?
It's always interesting to me to see, what led you here, what led you to Corteva forever. And
I love that you said that, Paul. Thank you so much.
No problem.
It really helps people pronounce the name of our fantastic company the right way.
Yeah. And, what led you to supply chain specifically from, a very diverse background, which you explained. I love hearing that because, obviously I've spent a lot of my career and fell in love with supply chain and see it as a really great space.
It was a fantastic accident, and I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah.
So having worked for a couple of decades in law, including having my own business, serving governments in law, I just needed to be done. And I was still teaching part-time at the post-baccalaureate level, so I could keep doing that. And I gave a 3-month notice and knew I just needed a career change. Didn't know what that was. I am not a millennial, but I took a real millennial approach to what that could be.
Well, we all have a little millennial in us, right?
I hope so. I'm now looking for the Gen Z part of me, too.
Yeah.
So I had a friend who owned a staffing company. And he said, give me a resume. There's this government agency that needs a temp person to help them with something. And it goes from the end of January until April 1. Oh, my God, April Fool's Day is my favorite holiday. So I took it as a sign and said, sure, here's my resume. Let's figure it out. It ended up being in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the agency that works with diverse businesses. Well, I said, I don't know what that is, but I'll go to the interview.
Yeah.
Met one of my mentors, had a whole hour interview. I said about 5 words because he was so interesting.
Yeah.
I know that's hard for you to think because I've already said a lot.
Not at all.
And at the end of it, I said, when can I start? And on day 9 of the temp job, the conversation was, if we found a position for you, would you stay? And I said, no, but if I write my job description and it's here helping diverse businesses do business with government, because this is fascinating, then I want to do that. So I got to use my MBA. I got to use problem-solving skills. I got to use gap analysis and how you find the fix of things. It was for the first African-American governor ever. So that was Governor Deval Patrick, who right now we've seen in the Democratic presidential campaigns. He's absolutely an innovative leader. And we got the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to over $1 billion in spend with minority and women businesses.
That's awesome.
It was a real amazing journey. No one does it by themselves. So as a whole team, please, I'm not pretending that I did that by myself. It really takes a dedicated team. And, that was government.
Yes.
So if that was government with government regulations, what do you think we could do in corporations?
Sure.
Deeds, not words, is a lot of what I heard.
Yes.
It's what it takes to drive real change over $1 billion. And think about what I immediately think about is small businesses, large businesses, all the points in between, how that spend with their businesses, the big impact it had. And probably, who knows, probably the better, higher quality, and I'm not throwing any stones at anyone, but, oftentimes these businesses that are fighting and clawing for revenue, they tend to over-deliver. So I bet the state of Massachusetts really won as well from this diversification.
You're absolutely right. But, Scott, let me tell you this. It's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Commonwealth. Oh, sorry.
Because there are a few Commonwealths instead of states, right?
That's right.
And once you get into government, you got to be involved in that.
Massachusetts, Virginia.
Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. Learn something new every episode of Supply Chain Now. Okay, so now let's shift gears.
Yep.
Let's talk about what Corteva does, right? So tell us, we had a sneak peek, so we enjoyed kind of pre-show, but tell us, what does the company do?
Simply stated, we help farmers feed the world. And it's really, we're created to help solve a variety of problems, and we do that through some technology and some interesting things. But here's our little story. So you've heard of this fantastic company called Dow.
Yes.
And you've heard of this other fantastic company called DuPont.
Yes, my grandparents both retired from DuPont.
How nice.
Yeah, so I grew up knowing, and really, we heard a lot of great stories about DuPont growing up. And when the site where they at, which I won't name, was turned over to a different large contractor, the culture was night and day. And so we grew up hearing all the great things and great ways that DuPont took care of its employees, and then we saw the other side. So I'm already a fan, but please tell more.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love when family connections happen, right? Those relationships are really important in how we all work together.
That's right.
So Dow and DuPont, everybody's heard about household names. We know who they are. And they decided that they needed to merge and have a journey to 3 independent companies. So the shorthand version that I don't often say, but I'm going to give it to you in your podcast.
Love it. I was hoping you would.
Here it is. Ready?
Yes.
There was an agreement. They got engaged, and during the engagement, they agreed what it was all going to be. They got married, did an asset swap, had a baby, got divorced, and are still friends. And the still friends part's really important because relationships matter.
Relationships matter.
So we're the baby. And here's what that really means. There were 3 major industries that for hundreds of years in heritage Dow and DuPont both worked in. So materials science, specialty product science, agricultural science. Did I say science?
You said science.
Okay, so science is really important here. And in this blend of what could be in the future, because Dow and DuPont always look to the future, right? So what could be in the future and what needs to be solved in the future and what gaps might be existing that could be solved? How do we fix some stuff? And how do we serve the world the right way and find what really exists? So Corteva, as the baby, is the agricultural science company. And we stood up as an independent company on June 1 of 2019. So today is day 27 of month 9.
Oh, wow.
Really cool, right?
Yeah.
How old is your company, Paul?
My company is now 4.5 years old.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you
just
stopped
older
counting
than
the
my
days.
son. Yeah, right.
Just older than your son.
Yeah.
Congrats. So you have 2 babies.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Hopefully one's feeding the other one now.
Yes, finally.
Excellent. And Scott, how old is your podcast?
We are, by the time this publishes, we'll be 300 episodes in. We started in May 2017. So it'll be 3 years.
Okay.
Not very soon.
Just a couple months before
That's
our
right.
merger happened.
Absolutely.
So let me finish telling you the Corteva
Please.
story.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as we stood up, it is to help solve some world problems, to help do the right things, and to really be prepared for future. So Corteva Agriscience stood up, and we do 3 things. We sell seeds, we sell crop protection, and digital.
Okay.
And if we blend those together, that's modern agriculture.
Seeds, crop protection, and digital. Gotcha.
So seeds, and we have our own unique seeds with our own unique traits. And you can't create a seed in a laboratory, right? You got to grow it.
Yeah.
So we grow.
I didn't know that.
We grow a lot. I didn't necessarily know that either. But, do you remember that little cup in kindergarten or first grade, and you had a seed, and we all put it in the dirt and watered it, and we watched it grow, and it was fascinating. Yeah. And then you opened the dirt later, and you saw the roots, and the roots were as big as the top, and you didn't know why the green grew up and the roots grew down, right?
Yep.
Those are just some amazing things that stimulated your young mind, and farmers for all of eternity have been doing this. I have always appreciated how intelligent farmers are. They usually get paid once or twice a year. Can you imagine if you got paid once or twice a year? That's the whole history of farmers, right? So modern day farming is different, and the way we help farmers is with these amazing seeds, great seed traits. And some farmers grow our seeds under our conditions and to our standards, and we harvest those seeds so that we can sell those seeds. So we already have a relationship with farmers to have a relationship with other farmers.
And that's what, going back to Paul's observation on the front end. And what you said a second ago, relationships matter.
Every day.
In this especially in this global business economy, where people and organizations and entities from all different walks of life, all different types of cultures, we've got to figure out how to work together to make the most of the opportunities that are out there, right?
Yeah, and that's where digital and technology can step in to scale those relationships.
Sure.
To do some
absolutely
really cool things.
It's not the only place, though.
Yeah.
So then in the crop protection. So how do you protect crops? Well, crops have problems. And farmers need to know what they are, but a farmer can't look at their field every second of every day. So we use digital, and we can use space satellites for thermoimaging. We can use drones and fleets of drones, and we can look at what problems are happening in the field and which crop protection treatments might be necessary. So if you had a fungus growing, which fungicide to apply, but only to the exact area that needs this piece of treatment.
No more, no less.
No more, no less.
Yes.
No waste, no excess, right? So cost controls, really good measures.
Yeah.
And getting to the root of the problem quickly. Do you like how I threw that farming thing in there with root? So if you can get to the root of the problem quickly and you can help farmers know where that problem is, if you had 1,000 acres or a 10,000 acre field growing, if the problem starts in the middle and you're not watching it from some aerial view, and you're walking through your field, you may catch some of it, or you might have to wait till it grows out, right? But every acre matters. And so here's part of the world problem that we're here to help solve. By 2050, the world population will increase by 3 billion additional people. We have 7 billion right now. Now, Paul, I know that you just did a whole lot of calculations.
Okay. 9. No.
We need to break out the abacus.
Right.
I'm not sure where we're going now.
So depending on part of the world, where you are, like in the U.S.,
Sure.
That's 30 growing cycles from today.
Yeah.
How are farmers going to feed those 3 billion additional people? If we're in a different part of the world, Brazil, we might have 2 or 3 growing cycles depending on the crops. So we're a global company blending those 3 products, seed, crop protection, and digital, to help farmers everywhere in over 150 countries so that every acre matters, with better yield and better results and faster outcomes. So genuinely, it's a privilege. So we have a purpose that the founders of this company took a significant amount of time to think about and work on together so that we, all of us, and our customers, farmer customers and non-farmer customers, really understand who we are.
You help farmers feed the world.
That's right.
That's my little short tagline.
I love that.
But the purpose is like this, and it's really important. So we enrich lives for those who produce and those who consume, ensuring progress for generations to come. So you're thinking already about your son's generation, Paul. You've already told us that, right? So your company exists for your family.
Yes.
And think about generations to come. Many companies think about today.
Yeah.
And many companies think about the things that impact today. And this company, Corteva Agriscience, is thinking about the world, future generations from now, far into the future. That's big.
Yeah. Purpose-built is so important.
It's purpose, it's significant meaning, a significant difference from the field of law, and even teaching.
Yeah.
And so the privilege to get up every day and help diverse and small businesses work with this amazing company that I get to work for.
Yeah.
I am filled with gratitude every minute. I'm energized. I literally love the company that I work for.
So
I can tell.
Yeah, I can tell too.
Yeah.
On that
shines
note,
through.
it really does. Let's talk about where you spend your time as global procurement leader, focusing, I guess, a lot on supplier diversity and sustainability. Where do you spend your time? Number one, let's say 1A, and 1B, what's your favorite activity in your role?
Oh, I only have to choose one? There's a lot. Okay, so where do I spend my day? I really spend my day thinking about how do I make the best introduction internally from a diverse supplier or a small business into the company. And that could be to only the procurement buyer who's managing the category, or it could also be to our internal stakeholder business unit And it depends on the need and the ask. And always we have those relationships, right? So I sit in what's known as a procurement department.
Okay.
And our procurement department's global.
Which, by the way, I'm not sure of y'all's opinion here, but procurement seems to have really a newfound, not purpose isn't the right word. You know, I've been saying for years that supply chain has a seat at the table unlike ever before in its history. Well, procurement is right there with it. It seems like there's a huge newfound focus on the procurement role. Do you see that the same way?
Yes, and I think there's been a significant elevation. So I do agree with you there, Scott. Procurement, I think, used to be the T's and C's. Dot the I's, cross the T's, make sure the contract's in place, make sure legal's not going to object. Do we have all the right paperwork in place? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, more transactional.
Yeah, great point.
It is a strategic plan now.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
Good. Tell us more about what you do for yours.
Wow, please. No, I was just saying it is a more strategic seat at the table. There are more aligned goals between procurement and operations. I think that's something we see every day.
If the companies are willing to unleash it.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure about y'all, but we rub elbows with different folks from time to time that still, unfortunately, view that procurement role as you described it. You know, that T's and C's. And I'm not going into the whys there, but it's such a constraint because, you know, to your point, strategic procurement and folks that really have that expertise, it can be such a powerful thing for a manufacturer or any organization. You know?
It's more about T's and C's and piece price and about that strategy. Right?
So we're looking at value.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because I just told you the whole story.
Yep.
Right? And not once did I talk about price. Right? Not once did I talk about weird constraints. I really talked about the value that this company exists, the value that we came from in heritage. The mission's all about value, the purpose, and who are we serving, right? And so if we help farmers feed the world, that world is diverse. Our farmers, like you said, Scott, because they're everywhere, right? So they're diverse.
Right.
So our supply chain also has to be diverse. And our people have to be diverse. So I don't handle the inclusion and diversity piece of our workforce. I have some fantastic colleagues inside Corteva who do that. But I have the pleasure to work with our procurement organization of about 450 people globally. And we are working at how we make sure that we have inclusion without exclusion.
Yeah.
So you never have only a majority company, and you never have only diverse companies or small companies. You always bring companies who meet our value, who can deliver on a promise, who really want to work with us in the right way. So I also talk about 3 ROIs. So there's the one we all know about, right?
Yeah.
Return on investment.
Right.
But then there's a return on innovation.
There's others.
There's others, and they're important, Scott. Really, really important. The return on innovation, right? Paul wouldn't be here if he wasn't an innovator.
Good point.
You wouldn't be here if you weren't an innovator.
Probably
right?
not.
We're sitting here with these fun headphones and microphones on, and we're doing something, talking to the air, so it can be put through wires and Wi-Fi, so people can listen to it on radios, which is a little old
You're
technology.
giving up all my trade secrets.
No, but that's all innovation, right?
That's right. That's right.
So this is a gap that wasn't previously possible, and now it is. And wait till we don't have to have all these wires connected.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So innovation, there's a return on it, and your business found it. And innovation, there's a return on it, and your business found it. So that's what Corteva needs to do as well. And the suppliers who work with us have to show us the return on innovation. But there's also a return on inclusion.
That's right.
And that's the one thing that I'm thrilled about, since you only let me have one, about my job every day. The return on inclusion is really important.
Sure.
In our supply chain.
And proven.
And proven.
Right.
And there are many times that a diverse business or a small business is in fact more nimble than a bigger business. And that comes a little bit, and I'm going to ask Paul a question in a second.
Please.
But that comes a little bit from how do you find your own gaps and solve your own problems when you don't have a big fat budget to go pay someone to do it. So Paul, tell us a little bit about the innovations and inclusion you might have done in your own company.
Yeah, the way we approach it with our customers, and I think it's important for us not to be innovating in a bubble where we, are in our offices and isolated of what we think customers need. It's really kind of removing that across the table barrier, and that's what I try to do. And my role with the company is to get us seats at the table with customers, so we are sitting around the table together, solving problems and driving outcomes, not just here's what we do and here's what you should expect from us, but what are we both working towards together? I think that's a message that we always take, and why we're taking a different approach to solving some really traditional decades-old problems within supply chain. That's the way we try to approach it as a team, and make it sustainable, make it long-term, and inclusive of all parties that are going to be working through it.
I like that. So what differentiates you from your competition?
Yeah.
The table, folks, the tables have turned.
Yeah,
Well, you told me I only could have one, Scott, so I'm showing you my second,
Right.
which is I get to talk to really interesting businesses all the time to learn about them.
I'm with you.
So I think our approach to materials management and some of these system-old problems, decades-old problems that organizations are trying to deal with, it's not things they don't want to do. It's things that their systems limit them from doing, and especially limit them from doing at scale.
Nice.
So our organization takes a different approach to the data that drives these inventory and procurement outcomes for organizations and their supply chain. And we are very focused on speed to value, but our difference on the data side of things is we can go in with existing dirty data and eliminate these like long data management activities and cycles and processes that most organizations are using. Okay. And then the way we treat data and understand it, utilizing our technology, which is backed by AI and neural net for speed, scale, and accuracy, that feeds some kind of interesting optimization models that, again, can turn around and make things a little bit more predictable and allow experts at the organizations, so experts at Corteva, that can essentially make decisions rather than be working in project space. So long term, we're laying brick by brick this deep learning approach that allows organizations to
frees up leadership bandwidth, it sounds
like.
To
me. Really develop a long-term plan and allows them to realize their goals outside of a specific project and maintenance cycle type of activity, turns data into a living, breathing thing, makes the organization, even a big organization, much more nimble, at least we think. And we've seen some great results with our customers.
So I like that. So tell me, 15 years in the future from now, what will keep your company unique and different?
Yeah, I think from a vision standpoint, our vision is the intelligent connected supply chain, which is pretty high level, and you hear those types of things put out there a lot. But for us, what that means is that an organization like Corteva is no longer beholden to the handcuffs of their systems and are no longer unclear of how they should work throughout their entire end-to-end supply chain. So as we were to grow, we essentially want to be able to give organizations the ability to harness the data that that is in their supply chain network and focus on the innovations that they're focused on as a business rather than being crippled by the back end. So that's transfer of digital goods, cross systems, and removing those more traditional barriers in an intelligent way.
And unharmonized data. The fighting spreadsheets. We've all been in businesses where this department's got the same spreadsheet, same title, showing different data than the other three. And what I've understood about whether it's Verison and really what a lot of companies are trying to do is harmonize all that and get to the singular truth. Is that what's that phrase?
Single source of truth.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I'll let the experts.
That's right.
So I like that
words.
you did that. Let me ask one more question because
Please.
we're in my I love talking to supplier zone.
Yeah,
love it.
So now tell me everything. Thinking about geography.
Mm-hmm.
What would that look like in 20 years from now in sub-Saharan Africa, which is a place that has, right now today, more than 60% of the world's uncultivated land? So how do you help there?
Well, having not been
So
presented
that wraps up episode 1. I'm kidding.
So, not having been presented that question and wanting to give a concise answer.
You're in a safe
What
space.
we would
Everybody
be-
wants to know the answer too.
What would be something that we would enable an organization to be able to do is become much more predictable, right? So, how can you take learnings from the past and output scenarios for the future and isolate it to regions? And that was one of the things, as you were describing, the growth of the company and the growth cycles that are going to feed the next 3 billion individuals across the organization. That was intriguing. Is what is that going to look like in that economic and cultural region to do that, where populations are going to be growing much more rapidly than other places.
Exactly.
And being able to isolate that and not be uncertain, right? So as we talk about, long term, what do we give organizations around, where we're at in the supply chain? It's, around trust that you have the right data to make decisions, and that every decision matters. And as you're making those up to that point, and trying to predict the future as best you can, that they're trustworthy enough and you're taking them into account because they all have an impact on that direction.
I like that. You know what, Michelle? I think there are, we can all agree, there are certain universal truths and common threads. I think of empowerment, and I think of understanding and agreeing to disagree, and be able to have different takes and respect those different takes. Well, to that long list, and those probably aren't the best ones, but data, right? So getting to your scenario, there's got to be data that needs to be scrubbed before we even start to ideate on how to approach and solve it, right? And I think that's for me, regardless, when I have these kind of conversations, and especially with organizations that have very noble missions, right? Or maybe they their business models aren't a very traditional manufacturing or supply chain, or they don't just fit a perfect pigeonhole. Well, there's still certain common threads, whether it's culture related or data related or leadership, that are always relevant. And I think I love this exchange y'all had here. Number one, because Paul didn't expect it, so I'm going to get a chance to. Yeah. But man, I mean, really, I love
what it's about.
It is what it's
That's
about.
What we're here for,
right? Genuine, authentic exchange of discourse. Okay, so I'm scared to ask you a question, Michelle, because I'm scared if you're going to flip the tables on me. I'm kidding.
Tell us about the future of media in supply chain.
Yes. No. I want to go broader here,
okay?
Because I think as fascinating as the Corteva story is, and really your role, and I didn't get a chance to ask about your pin. Maybe let's ask about your pin before we talk about some of the global trends.
Sure. So I'm wearing 2 pins today.
2 pins.
One is a Corteva Agriscience pin.
Yep.
And every one of my procurement colleagues who participates with a supplier diversity activity, they get gifted with one of these Corteva pins, which is fun.
Nice.
And that's the top. So
that's the top
maybe
pin.
if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see them.
There's the pins.
If you're listening,
so I'm making it a reward, but also a badge of honor to wear later. So I love that, right? But the circle pin that's multicolored.
Joseph's multicolored coat is what it makes me think of.
See, isn't it great? We all have these different ideas, and they're all good.
The Technicolor Dream Coat.
Technicolor Dream Coat.
Yeah. So this came from the United Nations, and it's for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So also known as the 17 SDGs.
Right. Yep. A lot more than 5S.
Yeah. So if you look online and you Google United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, you will see their logo, and the letter O in goals is this circle with the colors. And there's 17 colors, one for each of the goals.
Wonderful.
So in the sustainability space, we're looking at a global journey to 2030. So I already talked to you about 2050. Here's 2030.
Going back to the future.
And yes, but a different bite of the future. So there are 17 goals that 192 nations unanimously agreed to at the United Nations. To meet these goals, this was established in 2015. And it's a 15-year journey. So today's 2020. So we have a 10-year journey to these goals.
Gotcha.
And the first goal, which is to end poverty, was a previous 15-year period goal of the UN. And they got to 60% success on that, so they couldn't drop it. It had to become the first of the next group of getting to goal. And this is all about sustainability. Not just sustainability of a company, but mostly sustainability of the planet.
Right. Yeah.
If we help farmers feed the world, there's no way we can't do sustainability, right?
Yeah.
And every large corporation, whether a national, multinational, or global, they have to have a CSR, corporate social responsibility report.
That's right.
And so our company is about to publish ours, which is very exciting. And you should look at all the companies you want to do business with and see what their report is and how they're growing. And the great thing about today in sustainability, nobody's perfect yet.
Right. Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's room to make mistakes and pivot from them, find the gaps, learn and grow. So I ask suppliers all the time. So now I'm going to ask you, Scott. Ready?
Oh, man. Yeah. Ready. I think.
So you are. I know you are. So if there was an RFP.
Request for proposal for any of our listeners that may not have heard that before.
There we go, because we're in supply chain
That's
radio, right?
That's right.
So if there was an RFP for you to do some podcasts for a multinational organization, and they asked the questions, and here are the 4 that we're asking right now, and they're going to grow over time on this 10-year journey. What do you do in your company for sustainability? That's one. 2, what do you do for sustainability in your company that's related to the statement of work?
Okay.
So there's a statement of work in every RFP, request for proposal. What eco-labels or certifications does your company have? And 4th and final, what eco-labels or certifications does your company have relative to the statement of work? Now, let me define eco-labels because I threw that in. There are over 450 in the world. There are about 210 in the U.S., and every single person in the U.S. at least has them, at least in your home. So you have a washing machine, you have a dryer, you have an oven, and they all have Energy Star. That's an eco-label.
Okay.
So there are various eco-labels about what is the environmental impact, the environmentally friendly aspect of the process or the good or the surface. So in my company, our global headquarters sits in a LEED building. And it's a silver level LEED building. So those are some things about us. So Scott, tell me how you might respond to one of those questions in an RFP.
Given the office paper is still the number one biggest amount of waste in municipal landfills, we have gone digital or soft copy, and that's hard. You can tell I'm reusing these papers. I'm a hard copy addict, right? Each of our run of shows through 300 episodes. Some of those can be pretty extensive. All of those used to be hard copy. Well, we have gone soft copy on all of that, and there's some other ways we've eliminated paper as well. That might sound stupid or naive or, kind of the so what, but that's still...
It doesn't sound any of those things.
Okay.
It's a real material change that you've made.
Yes.
And
tough.
you're still on a journey to become paperless.
Yeah. So we got one more. We sat down with someone in Las Vegas at the Reverse Logistics Association that made me think about electronic waste, not in terms of PCs and whatnot, because that's a real thing too, but just in terms of sheer data usage. Because if you think about all of the server farms that are stood up, there was a well-known company that set up a server farm in Georgia. It will, within a very short amount of time, be the number one user of electricity in the entire state. And think of some of the industry in Georgia, Kia plants and ports, and so let's tie that back. Well, think about how often, especially if you're in digital media, each of these shows is a 3 gigabytes roughly. So if you're not careful about how you store that, you can store it 10 times and take up a lot more space than you need. Now you do that 1,000,000 times, and then there's no wonder the server farms continue to pop up, and that's a big strain on the infrastructure, amongst other things. So those are 2 changes that we've been trying to make. They're very difficult because we've cultivated these habits over millennia, feels like, right? But we're trying to do our part in this effort to become more sustainable and act like it. It's all about deeds and not words. It's a big mantra in our DNA. So those would be my 2 initial answers, And, it is a journey. That's a good way to put it.
So I will give you a couple other observations that I have of your company so far. You came here to this conference to touch a variety rather than having each of us come to you independently.
That's right.
Right. So you've reduced some carbon emissions of our travel in that way, right? And there's bigger issues with carbon emission, but that's an example, right? Anytime I can do a phone interview rather than a group of people together, I'm doing some sustainability activities. Now, we still need relationships. We still need human touch. We still need to be together.
Absolutely.
So there are occasions that's critically important. Keeping your work vehicle up to tune is one of the things you can do for sustainability.
I'm a big nerd driving around in a Ford big old van. Yeah. It is so fun. Everything fits right there. I don't have to fit things in nook and crannies.
So you have a mobile office.
Yes, it's a mobile office. Thank you very much.
So there are different things you can do.
Some miles.
We also in sustainability look at life on land, life under the water.
Right.
How are we making sure that we're looking at social? So the diversity piece.
Absolutely.
And you're at a diversity conference.
It's important.
So that's another aspect of your social awareness, right? SDG 5 and 10 are about reducing inequalities and goodness for women and girls, looking at the various ways that we can work together. So I want to encourage you and everyone who's listening to go look at the United Nations 17 SDGs, but also to look at not just our sponsors company, but also look at Corteva.com.
Corteva.
Because you can see what we're doing as we continue to release our new sustainability activities to really make sure that we're good global citizens, good corporate citizens, and trying to do our piece and lead.
Yeah. So you're reading my mind. I was going to, for the sake of time, we're going to kind of wind down an interview here. We're going to ask you where can folks learn more. Corteva.com. Yes. And I'm sure you are across social media as well. And how can folks, my hunch is that folks are going to want to talk with you. Without giving up too much information, are you on LinkedIn? Or what's the easy way to connect with you?
So there's
Michelle?
A couple ways.
Okay.
So I am on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But there are a lot of Michelle Morins on LinkedIn. So in our Corteva.com website, you can go to our Supplier Center. And in the Supplier Center, there'll be a place for Supplier Diversity. And that's where I am.
Perfect.
Or you can email me, michelle.morin@corteva.com.
Okay, wonderful.
Excellent.
Really have enjoyed. We're going to have to bring you back for a second installment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So stay tuned. I really have enjoyed your approach here. Michelle Morin, Global Procurement Leader, Supplier Diversity and Sustainability at Corteva Agribusiness and Corteva.com.
At Corteva Agriscience.
Agriscience.
We're a science company.
Yes.
Right? Remember, we came out of two parents with rich heritage in science.
Yes.
And we are a science company.
Science, Corteva
So let me add that many of my colleagues are scientists.
Okay.
We could not have crop protection or the seed elements without internal farmers, but also internal scientists. The brain trust in my colleagues is so amazing. Yeah. I really could feel like an idiot every day, but I don't, because everyone is filled with grace and dignity, and everyone that I work with cares so much about what we do. And I'm impressed every day with how intelligent and how people have room, because our leadership allows us to have room to do our jobs and to do our best and to pivot when we have to.
Yep.
And they clear the path when it needs to be cleared, and they're leading us to execute to win every day.
Lots of passion. Check out Corteva.com for a lot more on this mission and what they're doing. Michelle, it was a pleasure to have you join us. I'm so glad we connected last night.
Thank you so much.
You
My
bet.
pleasure.
Great.
Paul, thank you so much for sponsoring.
That's right.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for letting us be here. So thanks so much for our time here, Paul and Michelle. To our audience, real quick, stay tuned for more programming and coverage of here in Scottsdale, beautiful Scottsdale, of the Dimska's Manufacturing Supplier
Supply Chain Alliance.
Supply chain. diverse.
So the diversity is the first word.
Yes.
Diverse
Manufacturing Supply Chain Alliance.
Alliance.
But this conference is the Manufacturing Supplier Development Conference, correct?
Yeah.
I think so. Okay. Well, regardless, stay tuned for more information. And dmsca.us is where you can learn more information. Check out what we've got coming up. We've got a variety of in-person and digital events with partners around the world, from EFT Reuters events to the Automotive Industry Action Group, Resilience 360, and a lot more. And if you can't find that at supplychainradio.com, shoot our CMO a note, Amanda at supplychainradio.com. Imagine that. And we'll try to serve as a resource for you. Great show, Paul.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
We're going to have to put a highlight session just of this show.
Yeah.
Big thanks to Michelle Morin with Corteva Agriscience. Stay tuned. We'll have to bring her back. To our listeners, on behalf of Scott Luton, our entire team here, have a wonderful week ahead, and we'll see you next time on Supply Chain Radio. Thanks, everybody.